Welcome to today's CareCast, where we continue our series about how we care for ourselves and one another using Jean Vanier's book, Becoming Human. We're still in chapter 1 today, and we are moving into Jean's understanding of love. And he says there are 7 aspects of love. 1 is to reveal, 2 is to understand, 3 is to communicate, 4 is to celebrate, 5 is to empower, 6 is to be in communion, and 7 is to forgive. Now, I want you to stop here and think for just a moment. Have I ever conceived of loving another person through these 7 aspects? My guess is that most of us will gravitate towards 1 or 2 of them. In many cases, I think there's a lot of us out there today who really don't think about many of these things at all as part of what it means to love someone else or to be loved by another. And as a result, we have this giant deficit around love in our society. We have gotten to a place where we use love as a word to mean that we have some sort of positive feelings towards another person, but most often to mean that we don't want to do anyone any sort of real harm and that they mean something to us. But oftentimes this love is very selfish, self-centered, self-focused about us rather than the person that we're claiming to love. And so I think these 7 aspects reveal a great deal about how we can love better. So the first aspect, to reveal. One of the best ways to illustrate this, and I think Jean Vanier does this in his book too, is to talk about the parent-child relationship, and that part of what parents are revealing to their child is this sense of reality, right? You are beautiful. You are smart. You are good. You are funny. Right? It's a revelatory aspect that when you love someone, one of the things that you want to do is reveal to them what you see, right? All of these positive things that attract you to that person, that compel you towards that person, that make you have affinity towards them. All of these aspects about themselves that you go, wow, and that bring up wonder and awe and majesty and miracle and magic about this person that you want them to know about themselves. And so I love that we start here because it's grounded in what we were talking about last week with Vanier's understanding about reality, and that all aspects of our life must be grounded in what is real, right? And so part of our existence then is to show other people what is real about them, what is true about them. And so revelation in the true theological sense is opening up and clarifying truth for someone else. And so what does it mean for us to think of ourselves as truth tellers in this way, to go, I get to reveal the positive aspects of someone to them in ways that maybe confirm something good about them, or open up something that they didn't see before, awaken them to something they're missing. So often we view our own selves in the most jaded way possible. And love opens us up to who we truly are. Number 2 is to understand. How many of us feel like no one understands us, that no one's even seeking to understand us? As you all know, I'm a huge fan of Stephen Covey, and one of his 7 habits of highly effective people is to seek first to understand, then to be understood. So what does it mean when we begin to communicate to someone else, hey, I hear you, I understand you. I have empathy for you, right? The things that you are saying, the things that you are expressing, I'm in that zone with you. I'm catching the vibe you're putting off. And to have people who are willing to go the distance with us to listen and be in those spaces with us are so important. Three, to communicate that we have someone who loves us, who's willing to share, willing to converse, willing to dialogue, willing to communicate in, with, through, and for us. So, so important. And I think this is probably one of the more, particularly in a Western world, something that we talk about a lot, better communication, right? Communication skills and all of that aspect of it. And yet we all struggle so much with this as well. Communication and your willingness to be in a space of communication is a giant aspect of love. Next piece, to celebrate. Ah, friends, this is one where I think our world is so divisive that at our best, we often just simply tolerate one another. At our worst, we provide zero space for another person. But what if we went beyond toleration? What if we go the next step to acceptance? What if we go from toleration to acceptance to affirmation to celebration? What does it mean to look at someone and be like, you are important, and I want to throw a little party for you. Maybe that little party is simply just encouragements and support and compliments right here in the moment. Sometimes that is looking at other people and being like, hey, let me point out the amazing things about my friend over here, this person that you need to meet. Celebrations happen in so many different ways, but in our society, we have such a hard time taking a compliment that we really have a difficulty allowing others to celebrate us. So much so that then we begin to not reciprocate this in our own lives and celebrate others. What if you were brave enough, courageous enough to celebrate another human being? Number five, empower, to empower. We, in some ways in our society, we believe in this true idea of being industrious, right? Being productive and all those kinds of things. So much so that we often take things ourselves and don't actually empower other people. We don't actually give them the resourcing and support and encouragement and clarification that they need to be able to have real power, real authority, real ability and capability to go and accomplish things for us and on our behalf. And so, what does it mean to empower someone else? What does it mean to recognize your own power and privileges that you have and be able to go, you know what? I am knighting you with some of that stuff, and I want you to go out and you are empowered to act on my behalf, to act on my behest, to act for me and for the best of me as well. We don't tend to think of ourselves that way. Most of us don't even think of ourselves as that important. And we certainly don't look at others a lot of times and go, you know what, the best thing that we can do is to be strength centered rather than deficit centered. We live in a world that's so focused on problems and solving problems rather than seeing the positive and maximizing that positive in another person in the world. Number six, to be in communion. Our world is so often transactional, friends. So transactional, that's always like, I will do this for someone and I will get this thing in return, or I will do this thing for you if you do this for me. We live in such a transactional world. What does it mean for us instead to be in communion, to be in true relationship with one another, to have an intertwining, to see our lives as enmeshed in one another in the most positive ways, that someone experiences me and I experience them? Right? And I want you to think about that word communion and how we use that word most often around the communion table, around Holy Eucharist, around the Lord's Supper, in our own faith and tradition. And I want you to think about all of those things when you think about this word communion in relationship to other people. What does it mean for you to have someone else's body and blood, their very life essence, their very life energy inside of you and yours in them? And finally, number 7, to forgive. We live in a world that so struggles with this concept because we can't even admit our faults. Our world totally gets rid of us, pushes us to the side, cancels us the moment we admit any problem, fault, deficit, void in our lives. And as a result, we're not even able to be forgiven, let alone extend forgiveness to someone, because we're all in this kind of flywheel of acting like we are right and that our actions and thoughts and words are all just justified. What if instead we can confess? What if instead we can be vulnerable? What if instead we can be honest and authentic? What if instead we can have candor and as a result invite spaces of forgiveness, of grace, of compassion, of mercy for ourselves and for others? All 7 of these aspects: revelation, understanding, communication, celebration, empowerment, communion, forgiveness, these are all aspects of Jean Vanier's idea and ways of sharing and showing love in his book, Becoming Human. I would greatly encourage you to go out and get this. You can also find lots of presentations on it on YouTube or lots of images on it on Google image search. So much good information out there. I hope that you will pick up on some of that information. Thanks for joining me for today's CareCast, friends. It's been good to be with you. Hope to see you tomorrow.